another episode of the Access Vikings podcast. I'm Emily Leiker, joined by my Minnesota Star Tribune colleagues, Ben Goessling, Andrew Krammer, and boy, you know, Ben, you and I were sitting in here the other day. We were talking about J.J. McCarthy's ankle injury, and then 24 hours later, a whole slew of other news dumps, all kind of related to the fact that J.J. McCarthy is injured or just injuries in general. But we get to Tuesday afternoon, the Vikings end up signing Desmond Ridder as a backup quarterback. They announced that Aaron Jones is going to be on IR with a hamstring strain that he suffered on Sunday night. Cam Akers back for another season. He just always finds his way back here. I mean,
don't call it a cam back.
Okay. Looking at just the breadth of these injuries now and just the personnel this team is going to be working with on Sunday, what's the outlook?
Well, it'll depend on Carson Wentz, I think, in a lot of cases. I mean, he'll start on Sunday afternoon, almost at Sunday night. Not in prime time. They get Nance and Romo this Sunday for this game, but for the Carson Wentz versus Jake Browning matchup at US Bank Stadium.
Wow.
But I think a lot of this depends on how well Wentz can execute the offense. There are going to be things, I think, that just because of his experience, you would hope would be a little more precise. I mean, the reads on some plays, being able to get the ball out, but he's still only been in this offense for, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, something like that. So there's going to be, I would think, still a limited menu. He hasn't had a lot of time. He'll get time this week with the first-team offense and had it last Thursday when J.J. McCarthy was out in the hospital watching his fiance give birth to their son. So Carson Wentz had all the first-team reps that day, but still doesn't have much time with this group. And the offensive line questions remain, whether we're going to see Christian Darrisaw, whether we're going to see Ryan Kelly, whether Will Fries and Brian O'Neill are going to have better chemistry than we saw last Sunday in the Falcons game. There's a lot to be determined with this, but I think getting more efficient production from the offense is job one, and a lot of that will come down to – it doesn't come down solely to Carson Wentz because, as we've learned, there's a lot more factors to this on offense than just the quarterback, but the quarterback certainly can help at least make things run a little more smoothly than what we've seen the last two games.
Yeah, it stood out to me that we heard from Kevin O'Connell on Wednesday of this week, and he had mentioned that he told the team, look, Carson's a guy who's played a lot of football, done a lot of good things, and that we feel like we can tap into that experience, or he's at a point in his career where we can tap into that experience and use it. We've seen the Vikings do that last year with Sam Darnold. Coaches weren't too interested in comparing the two guys when we asked Wes Phillips at least this week about that, but it is a similar sense in that this is a guy who's played a lot of football, will bring the calm, I think Kevin even used the word, calm presence to the huddle that, frankly, with a 22-year-old, the unspoken part is that he might not have been so calm in so many of those moments for the Vikings. So the calming presence of Carson Wentz, you're hoping to be a little bit more on schedule with the passing plays. Maybe you get to more quick passing plays that Wes Phillips alluded to as well this week, and maybe Carson's better suited to do that with his experience. But O'Connell did mention today, too, of we just need to be consistent. And Ben, you mentioned the all 11 forming together and not messing up. It doesn't matter if you're calling a screen. If a guy's missing a block on it, it's not going to go anywhere like what happened on Sunday night against the Falcons. So to me, Kevin O'Connell was really trying to rally the troops this week. He said they need some confidence built. They just need to see them do good things and kind of start a new path of going forward here. And they're going to have to put all their trust in Carson Wentz, who, as you guys said, got here August 24th.
Well, and I don't think we need to spend a ton of time doing the second-guessing thing because it doesn't really do any good, and it's easy.
For past games, yeah.
Well,
or what do you mean?
I'm setting this up to say the lack of time in the preseason, the lack of time in training camp, I do wonder how much that's a factor. I think, as we've talked about, there are reasons for them doing what they did. Yeah. And there were injuries involved here, too. It's not just that there were resting starters. It's that Justin Jefferson wasn't practicing because of the hamstring. Christian Darrisaw was still coming back from the ACL. Ryan Kelly had some injury stuff, I think an elbow during training camp before he had the toe and then the concussion. Now, so some of the fact of the matter is just they didn't have that time. Yeah. Right, wrong, and different, independent of their strategy for how they went about it in preseason games, they just haven't had a lot of time together with all of the parts that they want to play on this offense. Jordan Addison, of course, had a great training camp, had some time in the preseason, but he's still a week away from being back from that suspension. So it is kind of this, ships passing in the night kind of effect where you have somebody coming back, somebody coming to the point where they're injured, going on injured reserve, that they're going to be inactive on a Sunday. It's just been hard when we talk about chemistry and timing and understanding how to play together. There's been a lot of things that have prevented them from getting the work you need to feel good about doing that.
And they don't get a chance to. They haven't got a chance to do that with Carson either.
No.
Or whoever is going to be out there on Sunday for their offensive line.
Yeah, well, and I was going to say, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about. Max Brosmer has like the second most snaps in this offense and is like barely behind JJ McCarthy at this point. And if he were to get any snaps in the next 3 weeks, would practically be tied with JJ McCarthy for how much time he spent in this offense. Andrew, you did clarify with KO today. Is it Brosmer or is it Desmond Ridder who's going to be the number 2? It is going to be Max Brosmer. He's been here. I think that makes sense for them. Ridder will be the third string QB, and so something happens to Wentz, it's Brosmer time.
It is, and I guess that makes sense, right? I mean, O'Connell talked about how Ridder will try to have a limited menu available to him, but the guy just got here.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a little bit like what we saw in Atlanta a couple of years ago where Josh Dobbs came in on a Tuesday. The trade, I think, was on a Tuesday, came in on a Wednesday and had to get up to speed on the offense by Sunday. Basically didn't know cadence, didn't know some teammates' names, and they talked them all the way through it. Yeah. You wouldn't want to be in that situation if you can at all help it. So I think that's part of the reason Max Brosmer is going to be the number 2 quarterback on Sunday. But, yes, you're talking about an undrafted free agent versus 2 guys that have come into the building in the last month. So not a great set of options to pick from in terms of institutional knowledge of the offense.
No. And just what a journey they took to get here, too, for their backup quarterback spot. I mean, we were talking about, obviously, Daniel Jones, who was here at the end of last year, Joe Flacco, Aaron Rodgers. And here they're at a spot where Sam Howell didn't work out, so now it's Carson Wentz. Just the butterfly effect of how we got here is pretty fascinating.
Ben, you and I, off camera the other day, were talking about how Jordan Addison, of course, is supposed to come back next week.
Right.
And he's most likely, it's not 100% confirmed, but most likely will be throwing with Carson Wentz, and that will be their first time ever throwing together.
Yeah.
Like Wentz was not here for any of the time that Jordan Addison was eligible to be playing this preseason despite his suspension. And so, one, he's coming off 3 weeks of inactivity, and then a quarterback who has not thrown with him is going to be expected to find him. So that's more of a conversation for next week, which we'll see. Kevin O'Connell still didn't have a timeline really for what JJ's injury is going to look like. He said today that he's in a boot, that signs were positive. I don't remember the exact phrasing he used, but like we said the other day in the video, there are reports out there that it's a high ankle, that it's going to be 2 to 4 weeks and not just a 1-game miss.
Yeah, and I think, you're not going to see them rush him back at this point. I would be very surprised if it's just the 1 game. I think, then you have to think about, are you going to fly him? I mean, probably he's on the active roster. You fly him over for the international trip. But that part of things when you're dealing with this kind of a quarterback situation complicates everything. I think, were we talking about this off camera, about the parallels between this and 2013?
Yes.
In terms of they had a young quarterback that year, and I'm going to give everybody a minute to brace for it. I'm going to say the name. Christian Ponder was the starting quarterback that year, and they lost their first 3, got beat by the Browns at home on the Sunday before they left for London.
Norv Turner,
and they had just traded Trent Richardson to the Colts. Brian Grigson had made that deal, I believe. So they go to London. Ponder, they were worried about him flying because he'd broken a rib, and they were worried about him being so close to his heart that it was going to cause further damage and
which is
possibly
crazy.
Be an emergency situation. Yeah, it was pretty wild. Matt Castle starts the game. Matt Castle wins the game, and then the rest of that season goes from there into strange places involving Josh Freeman. But this whole – I only bring it up because the parallels between, a steady veteran quarterback, possibly steady veteran quarterback, we shouldn't assume that yet with Carson Wentz, but do you take more time, especially given the fact that injury rehab is probably a little more complicated when you're flying internationally for, in this case for the Vikings, 2 weeks. I wonder if they will say, let's just not push it with any of this and say, let's wait until after the bye. But then the problem, as we've discussed off air, is the team after the bye, is the world champions coming into your house.
And then it doesn't stop for 3 weeks after that.
No, it does not. Then you go see old buddy Jim Harbaugh, and then it's the Lions, and then it's the Ravens. So
And then it's the
giddy
Packers in Green Bay after that,
Yes,
too. Now,
you're right.
and the Packers now look a lot different than we were thinking preseason they were
I think
going to.
it's the Bears at home first,
Oh,
and
yes.
then the Packers in, as you and Troy Aikman said, Green Bay.
In Green Bay.
Yeah. That's always a Troy Aikman thing. He says Green Bay instead of Green Bay.
The emphasis on the wrong syllable. Or it doesn't have to be
Okay.
wrong, just a different syllable.
It sounded very
That must
Troy
be my
Aikman,
West
so.
Coast
Oregon.
accent coming out.
I have to mention the 2013 thing. They bring in Josh Freeman, and Emily, and any listeners have to know that what happened was when they bring Josh Freeman in, they were doing his press conference, and this was over a conference call. And Rick Spielman, the GM at the time, could be heard in the back because Josh must not have known what to say, and I don't remember the exchange exactly. But at one point, Rick Spielman can be heard whispering to Josh, "Just tell them you're happy to be here." And we can hear this coming out of the conference call, and then Josh goes,
boy.
"I'm just really happy to be here."
Well, I think what happened, from what I recall, was we all recorded it, and the Vikings, this is how primitive things were back in 2013. The Vikings put out the audio that they had recorded with a tape recorder in the room.
You're right.
And then
That's what
released
it
that,
was.
and then we all heard the whispering because that recorder was in
That's right.
the room, whereas we were just going over the phone call. So
You're
they
right.
put that out, and it was like, wait a minute, Rick Spielman was basically in here feeding lines to Josh Freeman.
Right.
And then Josh Freeman, of course, the Josh Freeman game, which celebrates his 12th anniversary next month.
Oof.
I think he was 19 of 55 for 195 yards and
Wow.
throwing moon balls, the likes of which we haven't seen since.
And yeah, maybe Josh Freeman's lack of improvisation in that moment should have told us how he was going to fare on the field once he
guess
got
I'll-
out there.
Maybe I'll watch that while you guys are in Europe and I'm stuck here in Minneapolis. I'll
That'll
just
be
run
your
some
homework.
old tape watching all these games we've talked about in the past week.
Vikings fans hope that there is absolutely no parallel to the 2013 team that went 5-10-1 and got their head coach fired.
Yeah, that's probably about as much as people want to hear about the 2013 season from us here.
That's the quarterback room and the quarterback
Yeah.
injury. Basically, in equal, not disarray necessarily, but in equal disruption is the running back room now, which Aaron Jones moves to IR. You already had fullback CJ Ham on IR, and he's there for another 2 games. It did sound like, I believe, Andrew, it was you that talked to him coming out of training camp, and he said
You talking about CJ?
CJ Ham.
Oh, yeah, I think Ben had actually
Oh,
information
you
on
talked
that.
to CJ
Yeah.
Ham?
Yeah, I mean, just from what I've heard, it sounded like that injury was only going to be a 1-week thing if they had not put him on IR. Some of it was he needed the roster spot, so
Right.
they put him on IR and said, let's just slow play this. But I think the return from a health perspective, he should be ready to go.
Yeah,
So-
CJ had told me he was good, but that could mean anything.
That's very true. So you have 2 veterans on IR. You have Ty Chandler on IR after week 1. Xavier Scott is coming back from an injury. Kevin O'Connell expressed confidence in him today, mentioned the end of the preseason, but he really has not played any regular season. I don't think any
Since that.
regular season football and hasn't played since that.
He
The Emily Leiker Bowl.
He debuted on Sunday and had 15 special team snaps, I think.
There we
And
go.
that was, but no offensive reps. Yeah.
I'm just going to refer to that game as the Emily
Yeah,
Leiker
it was. I was the only one there from the beat court. So Jordan Mason, who I think we've talked about a little, being surprised that he has not maybe done as much through the first 2 games as we were expecting him to do, whether that be because he just hasn't been given the opportunity or was stopped. Now it's Jordan Mason's show, and I guess, like, how much do we think that's going to change what the run game looks like for the Vikings now that it's just him and with the quarterback situation kind of in tandem there?
Well, I mean, I think the run game needs to be more involved than it's been. I'm curious to see if they will be more committed to it with him taking most of the carries. I think there's been moments. I mean, he had a lot of carries in the fourth quarter of that Bears game and certainly showed up. I think there were moments on Sunday, I mean, on that drive that we've talked about quite a bit where they decided not to run it on 1st and goal from the 2. I think he'd had his previous 3 carries on that drive had gone for 16 yards. They were running the ball effectively with him, and some of it probably depends on who the center is. I mean, there's a lot of things with who the center is that get affected in terms of pass protection as well, but I would think you'd want to get him going because it just makes everything a little bit easier if you can fit runs correctly. And that's probably been some of the issue as well, and Kevin O'Connell alluded to that a little bit when we talked to him today, but I think getting him going is important, and especially if you have chances to finish drives without making things more complicated than necessary by just running him up the middle behind all of the beef, as I think we put it. I think Mark Craig put it in the paper. All the beef that you paid for, put it to work.
Yeah, he did use the word beef.
Yeah.
And the Cincinnati Bengals are not some famed run defense either. They signed T.J. Slayton, the former Packers nose tackle, in the offseason to try and stop that, but I don't know how much he's been able to do that. I think they're rated pretty low through 2 weeks in terms of stopping the run. Yeah, if you're the Vikings starting a quarterback and Wentz, who just got here, Mason's got to be your best friend. But we talked about that all offseason, and then we got to the games, and it's at the 2-yard line, at the goal line, and that one play they decided not to do. They decided to do a play action fake after McCarthy's 2 good passes to get them down to that spot.
I think they have said they were planning to run it on the next play, but that was where the umpire didn't spot the ball or allow them to snap it until 3 or 4 seconds left on the play clock, and they get called for the delay of game. Yeah. So, that ends up being part of that equation as well. But the easiest way to do it is just first and goal lineup. Put it in the end zone.
Exactly. But O'Connell did say today, we've seen Jordan Mason can be a powerful runner or heavy hitter, I think, or heavy runner, something like that for us. But he said we can't have any more confidence than we do in him as a bell cow back. They're going to have him at that, right? Because behind him, Cam Akers has jumped in and done this plenty of times before, but he obviously has not been in with this team until right now, literally just this week. And Xavier Scott, as we just mentioned, has not had an NFL carry yet. So I think this has got to be Jordan Mason's show for as many carries as Kevin O'Connell is willing to give him.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing to consider there is you need to keep Jordan Mason healthy.
Well,
sure.
I mean,
yes.
You can't worry about that. You can't let that affect how you're calling plays. But it is just another reality that they're thin enough that they need to keep him healthy. Yeah.
Let's keep ticking down this very long injury list. Left tackle Christian Darrisaw. Ben, you asked about an update today. We should also touch a little bit, because we didn't in the mailbag episode, I don't think last week, about Darrisaw had been questionable for the week 1 game, and then they end up ruling him out for Sunday night's game. And there's a lot of discussion with O'Connell about that on Friday, and the reasoning was interesting. I guess, can you go back through that first and then what we heard today?
Yeah, so the Bears game, they listed him as questionable in part because you can't warm up on the field for a game if you are declared as out. So they listed him as questionable so he could go through pregame warm-ups, and I think he told you after the game, Andrew, that he said he knew that he was doing that without any plan to play. So that was solely for the sake of getting him through pregame warm-ups, and then they rule him out last week because he'd already been through that part of the process, and they said that was something they had planned the whole time. As far as this week goes, they were planning to have him practice in full on Wednesday, and then we'll probably see throughout the week. I would guess you'll probably see him go back to limited on Thursday. Wouldn't be surprised if they went about it that way. I mentioned this on the radio the other day, but they handle a little bit of this kind of like you'd structure training in track and field. This sounds weird, but the idea of have a big day and then you have a recovery day the next day to kind of process the work and get your body ready for the next one. That is very much how they go about things sometimes, especially with injured players. So I would expect you're probably looking at a little less participation for him on Thursday, and then you kind of see what Friday looks like from there. But I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they said, let's wait one more and make the debut on grass in Ireland. It's always questionable with the international fields how good a shape they're going to be in, but I would think this one, if it's a grass surface all the time, it's not as big of an issue. I just wonder if that'll end up being the target date.
Yeah, Darrisaw had mentioned after that workout in Chicago, because we were all wondering, well, is that turf or grass in Chicago a reason why you wouldn't want to play? And he said, no, actually, I'd rather play here than at home.
Right.
Just because of the artificial turf at US Bank is a lot less forgiving than the grass, certainly. So that's interesting.
Heard it on turf in LA, too.
That's right. I do wonder if that'll impact his decision or their decision on whether or not to put him out there. Because last Friday, as they were coming off the field, we saw O'Connell have a long talk with Christian right before O'Connell came over to us and ruled him out for the game. So clearly there's a lot of talking they have to do with Christian, who has said to us and has said, based on what the coaching staff has told us, that he wants to play. He wants to get out there. And Christian has also, I remember last week he told you, right, that there's still some room for improvement in that knee.
Yeah, he said there's room for improvement in my knee.
So that says a lot to me.
Yeah, I think that's fairly telling. And I don't think, excuse me, I don't think this coaching staff or this medical staff is going to be terribly interested in putting him on the field while that is still the case. I mean, it takes a year to get back from these things. And you kind of come back, and then it always feels like the next year is kind of when you're fully back.
Yeah.
It's going to be, your mileage may vary on that depending on the position, depending on the case. But I don't think they are going to want to rush him back if they still feel like there's room for improvement in his knee, because this is not a guy you want to lose.
Yeah, and
It's too important.
Sunday will be roughly the 11-month mark for Christian after the injury. TJ Hawkinson came back from a similar injury in about 10.5 months. Obviously, one guy weighs 315 pounds and the other guy does not.
Does make a difference, I would think.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. But you've been talking about just Christian and how much they monitor. It made me think of Hawkinson and him talking last year about how they're monitoring my, he called them A cells and D cells, how often he's accelerating in practice, how often he has to decelerate on that leg. Obviously, running routes is different movements than what an offensive lineman will do, but I imagine they have their own O-line metrics for Darrisaw and how they're testing just how much work he's putting on that leg.
I think that's exactly right. I think all of this is being measured and watched fairly carefully, and I think a lot of how he fares with those things will determine when they give the green light.
I'm going to tick through a couple more here that we don't have as much detail on, but we'll hit. And I will preface that we are recording this before the first practice report comes out for the week. So that will come out later in the day, Wednesday, probably around the time that this hits your feed. So with that in mind, Kevin O'Connell brought up unprompted that Harrison Smith will possibly make his return. We'll see if we catch Harrison in the locker room, see how he's feeling, see what he is on the practice report today. He was out there. So were Andrew Van Ginkel and Jeff Okudah, who were in the concussion protocol last week. Jeff Okudah looked full go, didn't have a red no-contact jersey. AVG was using a red no-contact jersey, so he seems to maybe be a step behind in that process. We saw Gabe Murphy, the practice squad player who had been activated for the past game and had a minor, I don't remember what body part it was, minor injury.
The knee, right?
Knee injury.
ACL is what they were worried about.
He was on the bike pre-practice, just next to Darrisaw. And then we did not see Ryan Kelly, center, who is in concussion protocol. We did not see Justin School, the backup left tackle, who's in concussion protocol. Is that everyone?
I think that's it.
I think it is. We should have mentioned School too in terms of Darrisaw, because we don't even know if they'd have their backup for left tackle.
Right. It would be Walter Rouse against Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of said this would be far-fetched, but I did float because they brought in two guards for tryouts
They didn't
in
sign
addition
one,
to the quarterbacks. They didn't sign them, but they brought in two guards. And I did float, like, if they felt they had another good guard option, do they move Donovan Jackson out to left tackle,
really interesting.
which he spent all last season playing?
It's interesting for two fronts because, one, their next best offensive lineman up is probably Blake Brandell, the other guard who started last year. So theoretically, if you were to get your best five out there, and if it's not including Darrisaw, which is the scenario we're talking about, maybe that is Blake Brandell and maybe that is Donovan Jackson. But wouldn't that be an incredible ask of a guy who is just going to be playing his third NFL game and frankly doesn't seem to have been 100% on every single play at guard? He's still learning that.
Yeah, it would be a lot, and especially with the pass rusher he would see on Sunday with Trey Hendrickson coming in.
That's true.
I mean, that would be a lot to ask, and I do think, and when Kevin O'Connell talks about this, you hear him use the phrase weighty downs a lot, and they have not been able to have the weighty downs on their left tackle very much, which basically that in his parlance, that means there's no help coming. Like, you are blocking your guy, you're not getting a chip, you're not getting any extra help on this guy. You have to take care of it because we have to send the help somewhere else. So I think the concern with that, it would be interesting because we've seen him do it in college, but I think the concern with that would be how much help do you have to send his way, and then how much of it do you not have available to send anywhere else? Blake Brandell is an interesting one, too, because we have seen him play tackle in the past if he's needed to do it.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, but these are the types of options that we're talking about when they are where they are injury-wise.
Yeah, Michael Juergens is snapping to Carson Wentz, and Walter Rouse was presumably among the left tackle options cycling through there today, but Christian obviously getting a full practice today as well.
Preseason predictions are stupid.
Yeah, no kidding. What do you guys think they're going to do this year?
Not a Vikings injury.
Link in the show notes.
Not a Vikings injury, but we should note the Bengals, obviously, also coming into this game with a backup quarterback.
Revenge
because
game.
Joe Burrow has
love
a
it.
turf toe injury that's going to sideline him for 3 months. I wrote about that yesterday. Andrew was catching me up on the they should have never bleep cut me 2023 game, which was some nice context to have. But Jake Browning coming back, and he had most of the game the other day to settle into that offense, and he's been there as well for a few seasons.
Jake Browning played the best. What were you going to say, Ben?
Oh, thinking of Jake Browning in Cincinnati, and who else lives in the Cincinnati area now that has fond opinions of, or had fond opinions of Jake Browning in 2021.
Love Jake Browning for a number of reasons. Mike Zimmer did. He also played an incredible practice where he was the only quarterback available in a night practice at TCO Stadium for the Vikings.
All-time quarterback.
Because the other guys were unvaccinated and exposed to COVID, which at the time NFL rules meant you guys had to get away from the facility. You can't practice. Yeah. So there's no Kirk Cousins, no Kellen Mond, and no Nate Stanley. That's right.
That's a good trivia question. Wow. Need one for this week. We probably won't go there.
Jake Browning threw every pass of that practice for first, second, whatever third team reps they ended up getting that night. And then I don't think they carried him off, but I remember him like throwing a touchdown and having a big play at the end.
Water bottle. They all took their water bottles and doused him basically like Sam Darnold in the locker room.
The Sam Darnold celebration.
Yep.
Yes, it was that on the practice field. They all doused their water bottles on him after the practice.
And I remember somebody with the team joking after that, like, we should trade this guy for a second-round pick right now. This is the peak that it's going to get.
And they would add no quarterbacks to practice at that particular time with the COVID protocol. So.
But that 2021 training camp where Jake did that, the coaching staff, I remember after the game in Cincinnati, Garrett Bradbury told me, and I didn't know this at the time, maybe other people did, but at that time in 2021, the coaching staff had told Jake, you got the number 2 job. You won the backup job. Well, what happened was Rick Spielman, famously at that point not getting along with Mike Zimmer, the coach who presumably told Jake, you won the job.
Because of the quarterback he drafted, which I think is what you're getting to.
Cut Jake Browning. Jake Browning, which is why he was so mad in 2023, was not expecting to be cut because he was told he was the backup. Cut Jake Browning for Kellen Mond to keep on the roster. A few years later, Mike Zimmer tells Mark Craig of the Star Tribune that when they drafted Kellen Mond, or when Rick did, I walked out of the room. Yeah. He did not like Kellen Mond as a draft pick, didn't seem to like him as a quarterback, as we found out, and then obviously decided with the front office, decides to keep Mond over Browning, which is why Jake Browning, all these years later, is going to get a second revenge game against the Vikings.
Christian Ponder, Josh Freeman, and Kellen Mond all over the course of a decade.
Wow.
Oof. Keep your job with those guys.
We've named so many quarterbacks this podcast. There's like an infinite amount of quarterbacks we've named. It feels like any non-injury things we've heard this week that we feel like we should touch on heading into Sunday. Ryan Wright, shout out from Matt Daniels. He's been with Ryan Wright.
The punter's been good. No, but we should talk about Sunday, how this was supposed to be Justin Jefferson against Jamar Chase against Joe Burrow, the LSU coronation of 2019 in the NFL here. And now it's going to be still Justin and Jamar, but we don't know what to expect out of these quarterbacks, which we've kind of joked behind the scenes here. That could mean a shootout. I mean, we have no idea what to expect. The realm of possibility. It could be horrific quarterback play, or it could be Jamar and Justin just go off in this incredible shootout.
Yeah, I mean, we could see any number of different things. It's hard to say because it all depends on, Jake Browning's had a lot of time in that offensive system that Carson Wentz has not had here, but Carson Wentz obviously has played at a higher ceiling than Jake Browning has in his NFL career.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz, the year that the Eagles won the Super Bowl, Carson Wentz was the reason they were in position to do it. Nick Foles, of course, got them over the line, beat the Vikings in the NFC title game and won it at US Bank Stadium. Another fun one for you. Sorry about this podcast, Josh Freeman. But Carson Wentz was the NFL MVP runner-up that season. So he has done it at an awfully high level when he's been at his best. It's been a long time since that happened. But, yeah, it adds to the just throw a dart at a wall nature of this game.
Yeah, and I saw, according to ESPN, at least, might be according to a lot of people, Carson will be the first quarterback in NFL history to start for 6 different teams in 6 straight years. That's an incredible journey with where he's at. Kevin O'Connell loves to talk about incredible quarterback journeys. So we'll see what he can get out of him.
He's also, I was looking the other day, Carson has appeared in 98 games and started 94 of them, it said.
So he's
only come in as not a starter in 4 games in his career.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, well, because he's always been the guy for the most part, and until these last few years. Yeah, now he's just been a journeyman backup. We'll see what the Vikings can get out of him, because to me that's the storyline beyond Ryan Wright, how well Mr. Wright has done, which I'm happy.
Do something positive.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy for Mr. Wright. But I think in general, though, what they can get out of Carson, what O'Connell can churn out of this, can they get stuff on the run, which we just haven't seen. The Vikings, I think, are near the bottom of the league in yards after the catch, which is not how this is supposed to work.
No, they have not been able to get much going, and some of that's been timing. I think if you're hitting guys on time, hitting guys in stride, that makes it easier for them to run after the catch. We'll see if any of that stuff changes on Sunday with Carson Wentz. But, yeah, there's a lot to figure out with this one.
A lot of ins and outs.
A lot of what ifs for Sunday afternoons. Thankfully noon game, not a primetime game that all of this is going to be happening in. We will have a mailbag episode on Friday, so drop us your questions on social. We've put out call-outs for those already. You can also email them to accessvikings@startribune.com if you want to get lengthy, get wordy with your question. And I will read the whole thing if you send it in. But that is all we have for today. Hopefully we'll have some non-injury things to talk about on Friday, maybe. At least some quotes from some of these newly arrived people. I'm sure we'll go chat up Cam Akers upstairs today, and Carson Wentz will get a talk. So
we'll gave him Josh Freeman. We gave him the NFC title game, but they got to hang around for Ryan Wright content and Big Lebowski references Emily did not understand.
Yeah. Maybe I'll throw that. I have that mic test from the other night in there. I'll throw that as the post credits on this episode, just for a little tease. But we will see you again on Friday.
This is what happens, Larry.
I don't think I'm going to get any of your references tonight. This is not a night for me understanding the references.
No, it's fine. This movie's older than you are.